أولى ثانوي. فرصة جديدة وحلم جديد وهنعديها بالتأكيد، وهنعديها بالتأكيد. أولى ثانوي.
Dear secondary stage students, year 1, welcome to our English program and welcome to our channel Madrasetna 3 under supervision of the Ministry of Education. أعزائي طلبة وطلبات الصف الأول الثانوي، أهلا ومرحبا بكم حلقة جديدة مدرستنا 3 تحت إشراف وزارة التربية والتعليم. Today we are going to start Unit 6. Unit 6, the title of Unit 6 is Learning from Literature. What's literature? Literature means studying stories, novels, poetry, and so on. So it's a very interesting unit. Let's start it together. Our objectives for this unit is to learn the vocab of the new lesson. We are going to use this vocab in sentences of our own, and we are going to read a biography of Robert Louis Stevenson, our great writer. We are going to learn a lot about his life. So let's start together. First of all, what is literature? What do we mean by literature? As I told you, literature means studying novels, poetry, stories, drama, and so on. So when we study literature, we have two kinds of writing. The first one is fiction, and the other is non-fiction. What do we mean by fiction? Fiction means imagination, like writing stories, like writing poetry, drama, and this drama may be tragedy or comedy. And also we have non-fiction. When we study non-fiction, it means it's something factual, something true, something which really happened. Like writing the biography of a person means the life story of a person, the story of someone's life. And we are going to understand the difference between biography and autobiography. And of course, sometimes we have a travel book when we write about places which we have visited. So if you look at this diagram, you find that literature means fiction and non-fiction. In the part of non-fiction, you will find autobiography, biography, and the travel book. And in the fiction part, you will find novel, short story, poetry, drama, which is either comedy or tragedy. Let's start with some definitions. What is a poet? What is the meaning of a poet? A poet is someone who writes what? He writes novels or he writes poems. Look at the word poet. It's similar with the word poem. So a poet is someone who writes a poem. Poet طبعا اللي هو الشاعر, someone who writes a poem. احنا عندنا poem اللي هي القصيدة, أما poetry اللي هو الشعر عامة. So a poet is someone who writes poems. But the person who writes novels is a novelist. What about poetry? Poetry is the form of writing itself. So poetry is a form of writing, reading or writing. It's also a form of writing. Of course, it's a form of writing. When we write poetry, we write it in lines under each other. Here we have the definition of a novel. Do you think a novel is a long story or a book of facts? Is it something factual? It is something true which really happened, or it's fiction, it's imagination? Of course, it's imagination. So it's a long story. It's not fact. It's not a book of facts. It's a long story. And a poem. What is a poem? As I told you, a poem is a form of writing that is arranged in sentences or in lines. When we read a poem, is it written in sentences or in lines under each other? Of course, it's written in lines. If you read a novel, it will be written in sentences next to each other. But when you read a poem, you will find it written in lines under each other. What about the biography? As I told you, biography means the story of a person's life. So a biography is long story or it's a book about a person's life. Of course, it's a book about a person's life. Now let's study the difference between these two important words. We have the word rhyme and the word rhythm. What is the word rhyme? The word rhyme when words end with the same sound. If you write the word stay, hey, here we have the same sound. If you write the word fight, sight, here they have the same sound. So when two lines in a poem end with the same sound, this is called a rhyme. In Arabic we call it القافية أو السجع. احنا بنقولها كده in Arabic. In English it's the rhyme. So what is the rhyme in English? It means that two lines end with the same sound. What about the rhythm? As you see in the picture, it's the music in the poem. So it's a regular repeated pattern of sound. It's a regular repeated sound in the poem. So you think that the poem is going to be sung. You feel that it's a song. You feel it has music, okay? So this is the difference between rhyme and rhythm. What about verse and the prose? When we talk about poetry, it's written in verse. It's written in lines which has music, and this is called verse. So verse is a form of poetic composition. Poetic composition, it means that it's written in the form of poetry. What about prose? Prose is ordinary writing of novels or stories. When you read a story, when you read a drama, when you read a play, you find it written in prose, the ordinary form of writing. So it's a prose. The prose is the form of writing a text or the form of writing sentences. The word verse can have different meanings. Look at the first example. The poem has 5 verses. Here verses means lines. It has some lines. Each verse includes 6 lines. So the word verse can be a line. It can be a stanza or part of a poem. Look at the other example. Mr. Helmi recites some verses before starting his work. Look at the picture. Mr. Helmi has a holy book, either the Quran or the Bible, and he reads some of the Quran. He reads some verses. So verses can be parts of the Holy Quran or the Bible. In Arabic we call it الآيات. It is either some parts of poems or some parts of holy book. What about verse? Again, in the third sentence, verse, this play is written in verse. It means it's written in poetry. So the word verse can have these 3 meanings. Now we have the word biography and autobiography. What is the difference between biography and autobiography? As I told you before, biography is a book about a person's life. So we can say, he wrote her biography. A writer wrote the famous woman's biography. What about autobiography? Autobiography, again, it's the same, but it's something a person writes about his own life. So when a person writes about his own life, it's called autobiography. Like when we say Taha Hussein wrote his autobiography in a book called الأيام. So Taha Hussein wrote his own autobiography. So it's an account of a person's life written by that person. As we have in this example, Sadat wrote his autobiography. What is the difference between the word kidnap and the word hijack? We have here the word kidnap means to take someone away by force, to take someone away by force. For example, we can say a gang kidnapped a businessman's daughter for a ransom. Ransom means they want money. The gang wants money, so they took away the businessman's daughter and they asked him for money. This is ransom. So ransom means to ask for money in return of something. So a gang kidnapped the businessman's daughter means they took away the businessman's daughter. What about the word hijack? It means, again, to take control of a vehicle, of a plane, of a train, of a car, and so on, of a ship. So we can say the terrorists hijacked the plane for political reasons. They hijacked the plane means they took the plane by force, they took control of the plane, and they asked it for political reasons. Now we are going to read the biography of our great writer, Robert Louis Stevenson. You are going to read a short biography about the author. Author means the writer, called Robert Louis Stevenson. Robert Louis Stevenson was born in Scotland in 1850, and he died 44 years later. So when he died, he was aged 44 years in Samoa, a small island in the South Pacific. So Robert Louis Stevenson, as you see, he was not always well. His health was weak. He was not always well because the weather in Edinburgh was too cold. The weather in Scotland is very, very cold. So his health was very bad. When he was a child, he couldn't go to school. He studied to become a lawyer at Edinburgh University. But he always wanted to write. So he studied to be a lawyer, but he didn't like to be a lawyer. He wanted to be a writer. At the age of 21, he decided to become a full-time writer. At the age of means when he was 21. When he was 21 years old, he decided to become a full-time writer. Full-time and the opposite part-time. Full-time means he will work all the time as a writer. He often traveled to warmer places. He traveled to warmer places because Scotland is very cold to improve his health. What is to improve? To improve means to make it better, to make his health better. For a while means for a short time. For a while he lived in France, and this was where he met his wife, Fanny. She was from the United States, so Stevenson also traveled to America with her. So these are the places where he traveled. He traveled to the United States of America, and also he traveled to England. Although he is the best known for his novels, like Kidnapped and The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Stephen also wrote many poems. So what are the novels which he wrote? He wrote a novel called Kidnapped. And we studied what is the meaning of kidnapped. Kidnapped means someone who has been taken away by force. So he wrote a novel called Kidnapped. And also he wrote a novel called The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Stevenson also wrote poems. As we said, he writes poetry or he writes poems. And travel books. He wrote also travel books about the places which he visited. His first successful novel was Treasure Island. Of course, you know Treasure Island because this is the story which we study this year. Treasure Island is a story about pirates. So he wrote Treasure Island, adventure story. Of course, it's an adventure story because the pirates, there are a lot of fights in this story, and the people are trying to look for the treasure. So it's an adventure story about pirates. And of course, you know the word pirates. It's a familiar word to you. The word pirate means, yes, of course, it means a sailor who attacks ships and steals from them. His books are still very popular today, and many of them have been made into films. So this is a biography of Robert Louis Stevenson. Let's answer some questions on this biography. Find out why Stevenson traveled to warmer places. Why do you think Stevenson's traveled to warmer places? Of course, because Scotland was very cold and his health was very bad, and he wants to improve his health because he was often ill in Edinburgh. Edinburgh was very cold, and he wanted to travel to improve his health. Complete the sentences about Robert Louis Stevenson. Here we wanted to complete the sentences with one word. Robert Louis Stevenson came from. Where did Robert Louis Stevenson came from? Do you remember? Yes, very good. He came from Scotland. Yes, good. Robert Louis Stevenson wrote as well as novels and travel books. He wrote novels, he wrote travel books. What else? Yes, of course, he wrote poems. So he was a poet and he was a novelist. He wrote poems and he wrote novels and travel books. Find the word in the passage that means to make better. What is to make better? Yes, to improve. We find the word improve in the passage. It means to make better, to improve. And we have also the word famous. If you are asked to find a word which has the same meaning of famous, it's the word popular. So the word popular is the same meaning of famous. So he traveled to famous places, means he traveled to popular places. Or he became a famous writer, means he became a popular writer. Now let's study together how we can make requests. When we make a request, when we ask for something politely, we can use one of these forms. We can say, can you help me? Or could you do a favor for me? Or I wonder if you could help me? Or do you think you could help me? So all these ways are ways of making a request. How can we respond? If someone asks you to do something, how will you respond? You will say, of course, certainly. And if someone asks, can you help me? I will say, of course, or certainly. We can say, no problem. We can say, yes, of course. Or we can say, I'm afraid I can't. So if you accept, you will say, of course, no problem, why not, certainly. And if you refuse, you can say, I'm sorry, I can't, or I'm afraid I can't. Now let's answer some questions on the vocab which we have taken in this unit. The play is written in, we said that the word verse means the form of poetry. So we can say the play is written in verse. It means that it is written in poetry. Let's have another one. The first verse of this poem has 8 lines. We said that the word verse can be a part of a poem or a stanza. So it has 2 meanings, the word verse, as we have said before. Now we are going to study more about the vocab which we have learned. We are going to study about some prepositions which we have met in this unit, but let's do that on the mirror board. Let's go together. We have the word at the age of. What is the difference between the word at the age and in the age? What I say at the age of, it means the age of a person. So we can say at the age of 6 students go to school. So here we say at the age. At the age means when they are 6. At the age of 6 means when they are 6. What about in the age? When we say in the age, it means in the time, in this era, in this period of time. So we can say the high dam can say the high dam was built in the age of Nasser. So here we say in the age, not at the age. It means in this period of time it was built, in this era. Okay, so at the age means when a person was in this age. So we say at the age of 6 students go to school, but in the age of Abdel Nasser, the high dam was built. So remember this well, at the age and in the age. Also, we have the word result. We can say the result of. We can say what is the result of smoking? The result of something, the result of smoking. So we can say what is the result of smoking? We can say smoking results in. Here we use the preposition in. Smoking results in cancer. What does it mean, results in cancer? It means it causes cancer. We can say also cancer results from smoking. So here we use result from. So we have result of, result in, and result from. See the difference? Result of something. Result in means cause, and result from means it comes from. As we have seen, we studied in Unit 6, which is called Learning from Literature. We know the meaning of the word literature now. We know that it's either fiction or non-fiction. It's about studying poetry, about studying drama, novels, and so on. We have also taken the word biography, and we have differentiated between the word biography and autobiography. We have taken the word verse, and we said that it has different meanings. We have differentiated between the word kidnap and hijack and the many other words which we have studied in this unit. So study them well and practice as much as you can, because practice makes perfect, as you know. Until we meet again next time, inshallah, wish you best of luck. Goodbye.
أولى ثانوي فرصة جديدة وحلم جديد وهنعديها بالتأكيد وهنعديها بالتأكيد أولى ثانوي